The formation of the Maryland colony has its roots in British politics. It began when Sir George Calvert, also known as Lord Baltimore, is forced to resign his position in the British government after he announced that he was Catholic, which you weren't allowed to be if you wanted to be in the English government, because remember, England is a Protestant nation. So Calvert begins working on creating a haven, a safe place for English Catholics. At the time, the English king was married to a Catholic and was sympathetic to his cause, and therefore grants a charter to Calvert's son, the second Lord Baltimore. Now, the people who founded Maryland realized that they couldn't survive with only Catholics. They needed Protestants to be economically successful. So they early on decided that they were going to be Catholic in private, but don't really speak up on matters of religion. So the charter is granted by the king, Charles I, to the second Lord Baltimore, seen over there on the right. And Maryland is established a lot like feudal society of Europe. Baltimore has absolute control over everyone. He has absolute control over all 6 million acres of Maryland. And he gives big chunks of land to large landholders, basically like lords under the feudal system. They were even allowed to set up courts of law for any crimes committed on their land. This didn't work. The elected assembly of wealthy planters did not like having their political power restricted. They felt like this wasn't any different than what was going on in Europe. It's not what they had been promised. And so there's really no functional government in Maryland early on, which leads to a lot of problems. In Maryland, you have Catholics, obviously, but you also have a lot of Protestants. And when the Civil War breaks out in England, the Act Concerning Religion is passed by the Maryland government. This is a document declaring religious toleration to all Christians in Maryland. And really, just about everybody was at least a Christian in Europe and European colonies at this time. Jews and other religions are very rare. The main division is between Protestants and Catholics. The Act Concerning Religion says that it doesn't matter if you're Catholic or Protestant, you are welcome in Maryland. Despite the official act from the government, it's hard for them to enforce it. So there is still violence in Maryland between Catholics and Protestants. Overall, Virginia and Maryland in the Chesapeake region practice cash crop farming. They are agrarian societies. They rely on growing things to turn a profit. We also see the population becoming very dispersed, very spread out, because they need large chunks of land to turn a profit. We have isolated plantations created most of the time along rivers, and that makes the population of Maryland and Virginia, the colonial population in the Chesapeake region, very spread out, as opposed to what we see in New England, where we have more towns and centers of population being created. Compared to New England, we have much smaller houses in the Chesapeake area. When you compare people of similar wealth in both regions, there's a lot higher standard of living in New England than in the Chesapeake region. By 1700, few people in the Chesapeake area, if any, are living in towns, and that means that in the Chesapeake region, as compared to New England, which we'll talk about later, they were very slow to build schools and churches because you don't have enough people in one area to support those types of things.